just a few kind of housekeeping items. I just want to make sure that everybody can see us. Yes, okay. I'm just going to go into Facebook and make sure that everybody can see us. If you can see us, let us know. I'm just checking in the group. And oh, yeah, we are. Here we are. Okay, awesome. So yes, as you guys come on, let us know you're here. About the comments, someone mentioned that they were hard to view last time when I was talking to Sheila. So what you can do is when you're looking at the comments, just hit chronological instead of most relevant, and then you'll be able to see all the comments as they come in. Yay, it looks like people are starting to file in. Fabulous. We were very punctual tonight, so we might have been a little earlier than most of you. Okay, great. And I'm just going to go over to Facebook real quick and make sure that people can see the comments. Hello, everybody. Yay. This is so fun. Like, I just never cease to be delighted. This whole Facebook Live thing is so cool. Okay. So, and before we start, I just want to thank everybody for being in this amazing pop-up group. You all are amazing. And yesterday I was in tears a number of times reading your comments and the photos of all your adorable inner children. It was just amazing. And so I'm just kind of in awe of all of you. So thank you for being here. And I really appreciate your presence in the group. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Toko-pa Turner, who happens to be one of my dearest and nearest. This woman is so amazing, and I'm so lucky to have her in my life. Toko-pa Turner is a Canadian writer, teacher, and dream worker who blends the mystical tradition of Sufism with Jungian approach to dreams. In 2001, she founded the Dream School, from which hundreds of students have graduated since. Sometimes Toko-pa is called a midwife of the psyche. I love that. Toko-pa's work focuses on restoring the feminine, reciprocity with nature, honoring grief, ritual, and making beauty. She lives in a small island on the Salish Sea of British Columbia. Toko-pa, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So delighted to be here with everyone.
And I don't know if you guys heard, but Toko-pa just won a very prestigious award for this book. It is not only a bestseller in the UK and in the US and I think a few other countries now, but she also won what's called the Nautilus Award for independent publishing, and she got the gold. So it wasn't just an award. There's actually like a gold, silver. Toko-pa went straight for the gold. And I have to say, after reading this book, every word of this book is gold. So Toko-pa, congratulations, on what you created.
Thank you. It's very trippy, because as a writer, I literally spend most of my time in seclusion. So I live on a very small island, and we have a small community, and it's a rural place, and we have eagles circling the thermals right now as I look outside my window. I just have to share that with you. And yeah, so this book, it took me 5 years to write it. I had, like I was doing it full time, but it was a very deep process, this book, because it's on this question of belonging. And so every time I thought I had, say, a thesis, the inquiry of belonging would take me deeper and deeper and deeper, and there was always a fathom below the fathom, So for 5 years I lived in relative isolation working on this book. So it's so amazing now to have it be, soaring like the eagles all around the world, and to receive this fantastic award. Also, I should say it's independently published, so I did it all myself. So it's kind of a major deal.
Oh my gosh, it just makes me so happy every time I talk to you about it. I'm just like, it's just so exciting because as a woman writer, I just admire that, you know, how much you did it yourself. You know, it's all in you. You organically created it. You didn't, you know, you did it your own way. And I feel like that every bit of your book has so much integrity in it, and the reader can really feel that. So I'm sure that this is going to be a classic, like I've said, for years to come. And I'm really excited tonight because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 3 of our live viewers to receive a free copy. So be sure to comment a lot. Let us know you're here, because I'm going to randomly, my assistant is going to help me with this. We're going to randomly choose 3 of you who are here live to get a free copy of this book. So definitely stick around and let us know you're here. So tonight, what we're going to do, just shifting gears now a little bit, you know, Toko-pa and I have a lot of overlap in our work, my work being on healing the mother wound, and Toko-pa's work on dreams and belonging. And so it's so cool. Toko-pa and I have conversations all the time that are so interesting and that really speak to all the different threads, you know, the connections between healing the mother wound and belonging. And tonight we're going to talk about boundaries. I know a lot of you in the group have expressed a question, you know, of how do I set good boundaries with my mother? How do I set boundaries generally that really honor me? You know, from what we're doing in this group is preparing for Mother's Day, right? Which is a holiday that our culture only says, you know, there's only one way to have a relationship with your mother, right? That's the lie of Mother's Day that we talked about in the first Facebook Live. And so many of us feel like outsiders, right? Because we don't have that kind of relationship with our mothers. And so it's very easy for us to feel like, oh, you know, this holiday is awful. I'm on the outside, like feel like we're not good enough somehow. You know, we're bad daughters or something like that. So many of us carry that. And I love that this pop-up group is all about us transforming that lie of Mother's Day. And really, it's all about connecting with our deeper truth. You know, the truth of who we are, the truth of what we desire, and really being our true self in the world, and even in relation to our mothers. And that's one of the hardest places and one of the biggest challenges as we embody our truth, live as our authentic self, and really find our voice, you know? So what I found in my experience was that the more I could set boundaries with my own mother, I could set boundaries in so many other areas, you know? Like we've said before, when we work on this issue with our mothers, you know, the mother wound, which is really in us, it really liberates us in so many other areas of our lives, you know, automatically, because we're really working with the self. We're really working with the root of ourselves. So boundaries are so key to that. And I wanted to bring Toko-pa on as well, because she and I share a similar kind of story around our mothers. We've both been estranged from our mothers. And I thought it would be a perfect opportunity, because there's a lot of us in this pop-up group who have either contemplated making this choice, who are already in no contact. And some people, I've even heard people say, I don't want to look at the mother wound because does it mean I'm going to have to go no contact? So there's also some myths and some fears that come up for women around that. But what I thought would be fun to just ask Toko-pa to just tell us a little bit, if you'd like to, about your relationship with your mom and how boundaries and estrangement kind of happened for you or unfolded. It's a big question, but start anywhere.
Yeah. How much time do we have here? Well, you know, it's kind of a funny thing, because I tell a lot of my life story in the book, Belonging. And now I have random strangers who come up to me on the street and they say, wow, you know, thank you so much for sharing your story. And it's like I didn't quite realize, like, I mean, it's like I couldn't quite conceive what it would be like for everybody who reads this book to know my entire life story. So I'm getting increasingly comfortable with talking about it, but it's still edgy for sure. The story is that with a mom who um, who I believe had undiagnosed mental illness, and so she would volley from one extreme to another emotionally. And when she was up, she was um, infectiously sweet and articulate and intelligent and all of those things. But then it would pivot, and she might fly into a rage. In fact, being in a rage was a very, very common experience in my house. And when she wasn't in a rage, of which I was often, if not always, the target, the sort of, she would be in a very deep depression. So I would volley between who I was in relationship to each of those versions of my mom. So when she was up, I was her favorite person in the world, and she would tell me I was the only one who could understand her. And when she was in a rage, I was her target, and she was tremendously cruel to me ongoingly. And when she was in a depression, I was her caretaker. I was the one who tried to help her and support her and make her feel better. So I would say the biggest thing that happened in my childhood was that I learned that her needs were more important than my own. And this, of course, out into my decades, and I still wrestle with it. It's not like I've achieved some kind of attainment, but I have come quite a great distance for sure. But so there are all these complex pieces that are in that. But when I was 14 years old, I ran away from home for good. I had been practicing at running away. And couldn't, wasn't quite old enough to take care of myself. But when I turned 14, I ran away, and then the cops came to pick me up. They found me, and they asked me this fateful question: do you want to go home or not? And I said no.
Oh, wow.
And that moment really rings as one of maybe the most powerful decision I ever made, because it changed the entire course of my life. I ended up moving into the system, which is probably the same in the States. You use that language, the system?
Yes. Yep. The foster system, we call it here.
Yeah. So when I got jostled around from group homes to shelters to various triage centers, where a lot of delinquent children would be. So as you were mentioning earlier, when people find out that you're estranged from your family, from your mother especially, there is this projection around being bad. And so there it was, like, very much evidence for me, because I was suddenly surrounded by all of these people who had for whatever reason left their family homes. And so that began a long journey independently of a family for me.
Wow. Wow, Toko-pa. So much of what you said resonated. Thank you. I just want to thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for sharing this, because I know you probably talked about it so many times, but it's a really edgy thing to talk about. This kind of thing, this kind of no contact. And you were really young. I mean, you were a child. And so I can only imagine just how hard it must have been for you to have to make that choice. And it sounds like a life-saving choice, that there was a wisdom in you that knew that was the choice you had to make. And I see some people in the comments are sharing and amplifying what you said. Someone said, oh my God, sounds so familiar. Her needs come always first. And I think that's a theme I've seen too in the women that I've worked with and in my own journey, that one of the things that's so hard for us as children is that we are the ones that have needs, right? A child is like personified need, basically. And when we have mothers who are in some way compromised, in some form, whether it's mental illness or just a variety of other things, the mother's entitlement to her needs being met like starts to flip and become the more dominant thing and not the child's needs. So it's this flip that is just so painful, right?
Yeah, and can I just say that this is such a key point that it's taken me a long time to learn in my own life. But what happens when this flip takes place is that relationship with our instinctual self is damaged. Our instincts are damaged because we are learning that we can't trust our own feelings, that our own feelings are either not necessary or not valuable or not trustworthy, whatever it may be. And then you can think of all the other ways in which we go through life not trusting our inner voice, not trusting the feelings that we have, not trusting when we sense danger or need boundaries. Because we're so used to needing to accommodate others' needs in order to survive our environment, right? So we're talking like a deep core piece here, which has far-reaching effects in terms of what I call the wounded instinct.
Yes, the wounded instinct. That makes so much sense. And I'm sorry, we're a little bit fuzzy with the thing. So, but it's fine. I think we're going to be okay. I heard everything you said and it was beautiful. You're right. I mean, this whole thing of our having to suppress our needs and put our mother's needs at the top, it has this injury to our deepest self and our, the lens in which we view the world and our place in it. And that's why it's so important that we talk about this. And, Toko-pa, I treasure you so much because I think you're the only other person I know who is on this journey that's talking publicly about it. And, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us out there who have had to make this choice, but we haven't yet found a collective voice or a collective place to be safe. So, yeah, I'm just going to go to the comments now and see what people are saying so we can see what our audience is saying.
I'll just interrupt for a second. I am having a lot of delay with the video. I don't know if other people are experiencing that, but I feel like maybe it could be helpful if I move closer towards my modem downstairs and outside. If you don't mind, I'll just let you riff on comments and I'll go set up in a different location, okay?
That's great. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, Toko-pa, no worries. Okay. Yeah, so while Toko-pa changes location in her house, I'm going to check out what's over here in the comments. So let's see. So grateful for this conversation, says Jamie. Yes, me too. And the collective place to be heard. Oh, thank you, Madrona. She's saying video is good here on my end. Wendy says, yes, there's a delay. Okay, yeah, we're going to try to get that rectified. Let me see if I can see what the older comments are. Yeah, so it looks like you can see about 4 comments at a time on Facebook, and then they kind of disappear. So that's one of the limitations of this this program I'm using called Be Live. But yeah, if you put it into chronological order, you'll be able to see the comments in order that they appear. So that's a good thing to do. Yeah, so can some of you relate to this? I was seeing some comments earlier around your mother's needs becoming first. Avini says, my mother was very depressed as I was growing up and I was parentified as a consequence and developed a false self-compliant. Yes, same here. I can totally relate to that. The parentified daughter. Yes, many of us out there who had to be the mothers to our mother, right? And that is one of the most painful things I think that we can go through. Monica says, always her needs happen first. Always, always, always. Yes, totally, Wendy says, totally. Yeah. So yeah, and Rose says, how do you deal with the grandmothers for the no contact? That's a good question, Ro. And mothers to your siblings. I think it's kind of, that's a discussion we can have in the group, but I think it's kind of different for everybody, some siblings have no contact as well. And like in my situation, my brother is, as far as I know, still in contact with my mother and my family. And I'm the only one that has no contact. But it usually does have some kind of a ripple effect, right? Some of us can stay in contact with our siblings if we don't have contact with our mothers. Some of us can't, So it really, I think it's a case-by-case basis. Anita Marie says, I never knew what my mom was going to be like. Walked on eggshells. Yes, totally. Sigrid says, being used as the cause of her ruined life. I know, it's so painful. I think what that comes down to is, for a lot of us, our mothers were in a state of being deprived, herself. And so when we arrived as daughters, we were seen as a burden because our mothers had so little to give for whatever reason. So we learned that, that message of being a burden got passed down through a lot of us. Kristen says, yes, I think there were borderline issues. I was the one who was expected to step up and keep the household going. Absolutely, I can relate to that. Yep. And Amy says, yes, my mother's needs constantly expressed, shared, and put onto me to be responsible for. Yes. Oh, and Rose says, can see her a lot clearer. Yay, Toko-pa. Oh, you look crystal clear.
I'm so glad. It was it was kind of funny running around here trying to find the spot that worked, but oh, technology.
Oh, good. You're on your red couch. Fab. Awesome.
Believe it or not, I did hear most of what y'all were talking about. I missed a couple of spots, but
cool. No, great. That was worth the time you took to do that. Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're super crisp and clear to me now too.
Okay, good. So yeah. So we're talking about our mother's needs being first. And for a lot of us as we grow up, we kind of continue to put other people's needs before our own. We just put ourselves last and feel guilty when we do put our needs first. And one of my big mottos is feel the guilt and do it anyway. Guilt is really a part of a control thing rather than a conscience thing. It's like women are taught, oh, you're not a good person if your mother's unhappy or something, or if you don't do X, Y, Z. But really, that's another lie of Mother's Day, right? It's another lie of, taking our power back is going to involve guilt to some degree. Yeah. Toko-pa, how is it for you as a daughter who had a mother that you had to put her needs first? What was your journey like to be able to set boundaries and to begin to reclaim your no? And, what was that? How's that journey been for you?
I mean, I just have to say I'm a work in progress. And there were many, many dark years. I just want to be upfront about that because not having any foundational piece around my worth and, adult examples of what a woman can and should be. I was basically making a lot of mistakes for a long time before I, found a no. And, I mean, I'm not going to get into the very sad story of, those 15 years that followed, where I made a lot of terrible mistakes, out of that lack of foundational instruction. And, and then at a certain point, I think I would say probably the greatest turning point for me was that I found a mentor, a wonderful woman named Annie, who was a Jungian psychotherapist. And I am not sure you can go through this process without a mentor. I mean, I think it could be very, very hard, because what she did for me was she mirrored love and acceptance and belonging in a way that I was unable to give to myself. And at first, I didn't believe her. She would say things like, "You're an artist." Every time I went to go see her, which was sometimes twice a week at a certain point in my life, but she kept telling me, "You're a writer, you're an artist." And I thought she was talking nonsense, for a long time. I was like, she's delusional. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I can't possibly inhabit a word that large, But eventually, those validations, the love, the modeling of a nurturing presence, found its way into my consciousness. And, you mentioned earlier, you were telling those who don't know, of our listeners, that I actually have been working with dreams for a long, long time. And for me, that is such an excellent starting place for somebody who's trying to understand what's going on in their psyche, because dreams provide us these very solid forms and images which can show us what dynamics are taking place for us psychically. And so one of the hardest things about estrangement from your mother, I think, is that even though you're physically separated from her, and say maybe you're having no contact or minimal contact, she still lives inside you internally. And you have, I bet everyone who's listening and in this group has had that dream, where mother, in whatever her worst form, shows up in your dream and is like wreaking havoc in an even exaggerated way, maybe, than she does in waking life. And then, the next day you wake up from this dream and you're all messed up and you're all triggered. And can we have a show of hands to have how many people have had dreams like that? But so this is the key for me that I understood through my work with Annie, is that when you have dreams like that, you can begin to work with mother internally. You can begin to work with noticing when you had a dream like that, when you have a dream like that, noticing the day previous. Were you being really hard on yourself? Were you yelling at yourself, or cornering yourself, or judging yourself for being needy, or whatever your piece is, right? Because we all have different iterations. And if you can begin to make this connection, you start to see that the real work is the inner mother. And if you can rehabilitate or remother yourself by treating yourself well and using many of the tools that Bethany teaches in her Mother Wound course and in all your writing, then you can begin to watch. And this is, sorry, I get so excited about this. You can begin to see how the inner mother begins to transform. And now this doesn't happen overnight. I want to say, again, it took me, 10, 15 years to get to this point. But I would have dreams at a certain point that my dream mother was undergoing different transformations and behaving differently. And then eventually I just stopped having dreams about her. Now I rarely dream about her. Of course, now I'm in my, mid-40s, and I have been estranged from her for a long time. So I've already gained a lot of physical distance too. So yeah, just an encouragement to pay attention to your dreams and notice that these dreams are not to be taken literally, but that actually you can take them symbolically and notice that this is how your psyche recognizes an internal monologue, an internal dialogue that's taking place between your conscious self, which is the self that knows what's happening or thinks they know, and the unconscious self, which is where the death mother lives.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was brilliant, everything you just shared, just from your own experience, and I think you hit on it, like the core of it right there, that like, even if we're estranged from our mothers or, minimal contact, like you said, our mother is still in our heads, in terms of our monologue, our self-talk, and that's the real work, right? Whether our mother is in our lives or whether we're estranged from our mothers, we have to do that inner work of transforming the inner mother. Absolutely. And I think your points about dreams are so powerful. And I hear from women that do my course and their dreams are so intense and amazing, right? Like when they start really digging up the stuff and working on it, it's like the psyche just opens up and shares all this material. And like you said, it's such a rich harvest of images and information that you can work with as you're doing like the conscious kind of transformation work too.
Yeah, because, when you're not paying attention to your dreams, let's say you have a situation where you get really triggered by someone, let's say an older woman who speaks to you in a certain way, and it triggers the heck out of you. And you don't even, like, maybe you know that you're triggered, but maybe you don't. Maybe you go into a dark spiral and you have like a depression for 3 days, and you don't make the connection between this seemingly innocuous event, which was this interaction with somebody, who's an older woman, versus what's happening to you psychically as you enter into depression or anxiety or anger. But what the dream provides is it shows you what's going on for you psychically, so you can, in a way, externalize it into an image, and you can see what's happening dynamically. So I have found, I really have found that my dreams have parented me through this whole process of raising myself.
Isn't it amazing, Toko-pa? Like just hearing you talk about this, I just feel such an appreciation that, each of us has this inbuilt, like customized movie that plays in our minds every night that shows us it's a supportive image series that's trying to tell us a story, tell us information about what we're going through in our conscious minds. It's just amazing that our psyche does that.
It is. Well, it is naturally inclined, the psyche is naturally inclined to wholeness, to healing. So it's a real misconception, when we have a bad dream or a dark dream, most of us want to push it away and say, right, oh, that was perverted or horrible or torturous or whatever. But believe it or not, there's always something healing in there if we have the courage to turn towards it and be curious about it. In the very least, be curious about it.
Yes, totally. That's so interesting. I love that. That's a nice thing to hang on to, that even dreams that you don't understand or that seem a little disturbing or odd or just you don't want to look at for whatever reason, that they are trying to help. They're trying to show you something, and I used to believe that if I had a bad dream, that it meant something bad was going to happen to me, or I was in a bad situation. Um, and so it was a big deal when I started to realize it doesn't actually mean anything is wrong or bad. It just means it's trying to get your attention about something. Like it's trying to get you to listen to it.
Exactly, and this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier around boundaries and finding your no. When we pay attention to our dreams, what it does is it attunes us more subtly to our healthy instinct. So it's kind of like, here's an image. When you walk, if you're walking on a tightrope, if you lean too much towards the right-hand side, you need to compensate with a little bit of weight on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And when you lean too much to the left, you need to compensate with a little bit of weight on the right. So dreams kind of provide this compensation. They show us when our biases are leaning too heavily to one direction. So obviously this is a more complex art, and learning to understand your dreams is a little bit like learning to understand another language. There's no end to how deep you can go with that study. However, the important thing is that it is rehabilitating our relationship to our intuition and to our inner knowing and to our instinctual no's and our yeses. And as we pay attention to that and we learn to follow its guidance, then the gap between an event and our reaction to that event, or our response to that event, or our understanding of why we feel how we feel about that event, like the example that I was using earlier about being triggered by an older woman, that gap will shrink. It'll get smaller and faster, and so we'll be like, I see what's happening here. My weather wound is being triggered, and it was this moment, and so I can find a way to reassure myself through this threshold, and you won't spiral down for those 3 days because you're becoming conscious of it.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, thank you. I love what you're saying about that transition. Like when we feel a trigger come on, and there's like our neurocircuitry is showing us like, okay, this is the pathway. Like it's everything kind of speeds up, and we can tend to fall into a pattern that we've learned, from our early childhood. It's just been there for so long. But if we can slow that down and reassure ourselves, and I teach women how to like reassure that inner child, right? That little girl that might be afraid that she's unsafe in a similar way from the past. We can reassure her, reassure ourselves in some way. Then we can really actually rewire our brains and like do a different choice. And in doing so, we kind of open up a whole new realm, right? Of ways of being in the world. And boundaries are one of those, an example of that, how we can halt some of those patterns of over functioning, emotional caretaking. Toko-pa and I talk about this and support each other in owning our no, being even more fierce, with what you deserve, we're on that journey with you. So we don't have, we're not perfect or enlightened or anything in this. We're right on the path alongside you. And I think right now, like this time in history, we're like living through a time when women are really saying no, like in a whole new way. With Me Too and some other things, people are standing up and saying, no, this is not okay anymore. We know this has been happening for so long. And so I think the whole process of boundaries, and for some of us becoming estranged, is a form of, being initiated into more of our true sovereign selves, and less of just being someone who receives that legacy of pain from our mothers, and just passes it along. So, coming to a place of needing to set boundaries, it's like so exciting. And I get so excited for, the people I work with when it's like, I need to say no, but I'm scared. But like, this is when we really this is the work of transforming intergenerational patterns. This is how we do it, right? And every little no that we can bring authentic.
I would just like to take a moment and tell everybody that Bethany is my boundaries spirit animal. I just think you are so amazing with boundaries, and I'm in awe of the risks that you take on a daily basis to assert your boundaries in lots of different areas of your life. It's really kind of thrilling, and I want to grow up to be just like you.
Oh, Toko-pa, thank you so much. It's so cool of you to say, and I appreciate that so much. And our friendship has helped me, it continues to help me to do that. And like you, I had a mentor, and I still have the same mentor, 20 years now, who like your Annie, her name is Nicole, and she taught me over time how to be fierce. And I would sit and talk with her, and she'd be like, okay, it's time, you're in this middle of this situation where you need to set a boundary. You can do it. Like, you can do this. And I'm like, no way. All through my 20s, I was like, there's no way I can do that. Like, that's terrifying. Like, standing up and asserting myself and, saying I'm not going to stand for this anymore and I deserve better or whatever. It was just terrifying. But it's one of those muscles, just like receiving is kind of a muscle that we need to work. I think setting boundaries is like another one of those muscles that we just have to be like living on that cutting edge and just taking one more step into that no. And yeah, and it's so awesome to have a buddy on the journey.
Wow. And maybe it's a good moment to mention also that all of the amazing anti-racism work that you do has been teaching you a whole other level of boundaries, which is like, ooh, thrilling, because women of color are just rising up right now, and really leading us white women how, I mean, if you choose to expose yourself to their teaching, teaching us how to stand in our power also. So that's been really inspiring for me as well.
Totally. I know it's just definitely so important for us as white women to do that work, because that's another legacy of our mother wound, right? Racism, and other isms like, homophobia or ableism or whatever. This is stuff that we have to dismantle as part of the mother wound legacy that each of us has, to some degree. And someone said on Facebook just now, I guess we have to reprogram ourselves. And in many ways, that's true. It's like, we have to, and that requires being uncomfortable, and I know Toko-pa talks about this a lot in your book. You talk about, kind of befriending that discomfort as a way of finding out who we really are and living as, I think it's in the Initiations by Exile, which is a gorgeous chapter in Toko-pa's book, where she talks a lot about, just being willing to go on our own and to really stick with ourselves, even when the world, the culture, our friends, and even our closest family members can be like, what are you thinking? Like, why are you doing that? Why can't you just be who you always were?
Yeah, and sort of tying it into what we're talking about around estrangement, I think it's possible to reframe that idea that we're reprogramming ourselves, because I think what we're actually doing is unhindering ourselves.
Yeah.
So that what is indigenously there, what intrinsically is our nature, is allowed to just thrive. And so it's more like pulling off unwanted voices that belong to someone other, that is someone else's information more than our own. So Initiations by Exile, which is this chapter in my book, is about kind of taking back this idea of estrangement or exile from the group or the family in this case, or whatever your form of exile might be, and taking back this idea that we're victimized by being an outsider, and in fact see it as a kind of psychic initiation, that it is necessary for us to come into that intrinsic self, to make the separation from the group or the family or the mother or whatever that form of exile or estrangement really is. And so what I'm trying to say is, all my life people would say to me, so tell me about your family, and then I would, be in this terrible place where I'd have to find a way to socially explain myself. And I would say, well, I'm estranged from my mother and my family. And the immediate thing people project onto you is wounding, and sympathy. Oh, and they want to help you. They want to understand. They want to fix it, right? And so I've learned now to change this language to conscious estrangement. I am consciously estranged, which says to the other that I am not. I'm not a victim of this circumstance, and nothing needs to be fixed. I'm making a choice. I am saying, like that moment when the cops turned to me and said, "Do you want to go home or not?" I made a choice. And it wasn't that I was running away from something,
right?
But I was running towards some life that I knew would be better than the one I had going. And it took me, some time to figure out what I was doing. I think I just had an instinctual sense of it. But now I see that I was making a conscious estrangement.
I love how you put that. That's so empowering to see it that way, because our society says, the word estranged. I mean, it has strange in it. It's like there's this sense of, ooh, you were bad. It's the ultimate, taboo is to, like, isn't that one of the commandments? Like, honor your father and mother, right? So there's this, our society is also like set up to like benefit adults, and children are kind of disposable in some way. They're not, it's always like the benefit of the doubt is given to the parent, not the child. So we automatically receive, all this blame and questions and suspicion. And I think that concept of conscious estrangement is so different than that. It's just like, that is not what this is. This is a conscious choice. And like, your eyes are wide open here.
Yeah, because I think there's like, estrangement is only a terrible place so long as we are orienting ourselves by another person's locus, like another person's definition of inside, right? So I'm only estranged. It's a bad kind of estrangement if I am outside of somebody else's version of inside. But when we say that we're consciously estranged, suddenly we have control of what the inside is. The inside is where we are, right? And it's kind of like an inner and outer declaration that we've chosen this place, either in the act of exile or after the fact, So even if it's happened because of some terrible circumstance, still you can choose it. You can choose it after the fact and say, this is part of my story. This is part of what is the life that I am weaving into existence. This is my heroine's story.
Yeah. Oh. I just wanted to pause there. Hmm. Wow. Thank you. What you just said really resonated with me about that even if it's not something, even if it is a estrangement that happened as a result of something that wasn't your choice, you can still choose it. You know, you can still make your exile your empowerment and own that with every cell of your being. You know, you're talking reminded me of this night. It's a memory that I think I'll carry with me till I die. It's just such a clear memory. I was in Budapest and I was walking down the street. I was there to be teaching. I taught a workshop there. And I remember I was just walking down the street in Budapest at like 9 p.m. And I was like, nobody in my family knows where I am. Like, I, you know, I have no contact. Like, there's nothing there. But I just had this exhilaration. I just had this overwhelming feeling of such freedom and self ownership.
Mm.
Like, like my place on the planet, my place in that moment was so purely mine. And I just had this sense that such a deep love for myself that I think wouldn't have been possible had I not gone um, through that conscious kind of estrangement. Um, just like being totally free, totally unattached, totally my own, and having gone through a lot of pain in the process. But that pain, knowing that you're doing the right thing for you, you know, it really seasons you into another being. It seasons you into more of who that instinctual self, that indigenous self you were talking about, like that initiation, I guess you could call it. You know, the pain of going through it is an initiation into more of your sovereignty.
Absolutely, beautifully said. Yeah, I think for a long, long time, just personally speaking, for a long time, what kept me in a pattern of um, feeling tortured by my situation
Yeah.
was that I had an idea of the imaginary family,
Mm,
the imaginary mother that I wanted to have. And this imaginary mother was what kept me getting back into relationship with her over and over again. And every time I did, it was so abusive and awful. And I would go through this process over and over again. And I realized that I really needed to um, accept, acknowledge, and own the actual family, the actual mother I had, and make a choice out of that actuality. Do you know what I mean?
I totally do. Yeah. This is what I teach in my course on, I think it's step 4. It's giving up the impossible dream that one day
Right.
our mother will change into who we want her to be. And we can go back like over and over, right? Like many women, I think, spend their entire lives going back to that dry well. Like I'm gonna get things are gonna be different this time, or you know, maybe I'll explain it better this time, it'll be different, or and
Or I'll have thicker skin and it won't bother me so much. That's the one that really hooked me for decades.
oh man. Yeah, totally. So what do you think helped you? Is it just time, like where you were just like, I think I need to look at what's actually happening, not the dream version?
I come back to Annie again because I think what happens to you as a small person when you're in relationship with somebody who's abusive towards you, you think that they're the adult so that they know better and
Right.
that there must be something wrong with you. That is the natural conclusion to a situation like that. And you're often made to be wrong in that relationship. And so you live with this sense of just being wrong or being unworthy or non valuable.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started to share some of my stories with Annie, she would reflect the shock and the horror
Yeah.
and grief and the confusion And the, words, like I had never heard anybody, like I remember one time Anne said to me, "It sounds like your mother was really jealous of you." I mean, I didn't even think that was possible, right? Like, how could a mother possibly be jealous of their baby? Like, how is that even possible? Well, I'll tell you, it's possible. And I didn't know until that moment when she reflected that and many other things back to me. So I think that was the starting point for me, was being able to get seen, like to tease, to parse out what was true and what was not true, which
Yeah,
was
like you got witnessed.
witnessed. Yeah.
Yeah, so powerful. We need that witness. We totally do. And I think as healing the mother wound, women on this journey, that's why these communities, like this community, even now in this pop-up group, we're healing so much together because we have each other. We can share our stories and we can feel less isolated, and we can witness and say, oh my gosh, that happened. Oh, that happened to me too. And I can totally relate, or listen to this. We're really bringing them out of the shadows into the light. And this is huge. I don't think this has ever happened quite at this level before. So it's just so awesome to share space with all of you. Now I noticed the time, and we're getting close to the top of the hour. So I wanted to see if maybe we could take, do you have time to take a question or two, Toko-pa?
Actually, I realized I might have gotten carried away blabbing. And so if you want to stay another 5-10 minutes, that is totally fine with me too.
Oh no, you didn't get carried away. It was great. Everything you've been sharing is so filled with wisdom. It's just amazing. So now what I'd like to do is just go to the comments and see what you guys have. Maybe we'll take one or two questions. So I'm going to go over there now. Oh, thank you everyone for all these questions and all these comments you've been sharing. Sabrina says, validating. Sigrid agrees. My mother was always jealous when I had boyfriends. She even flirted with them. Oh gosh.
Yeah. I am, like, I recognize, I totally have that same thing.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens, it's unbelievable. Okay, does anyone have a question? I can only see 4 questions at a time for some reason. Let me see if I can see more in here. Oh, I can see more down here. I got it. I'm figuring this out, this Be Live thing. Yes, someone else said, I wanted the imaginary loving mother so much because I believed that I'd only ever be worth anything if my mother loved me. A part of me still believes that and is still waiting to be formed as lovable as a lovable being by the love of my mother. I hear you. This is something that's so common. Let's see. A lot of people agreeing here. Yeah, acceptance of the reality is the key, but so hard to get to. It is. It takes time. It really does.
Like, let's just take a moment and say hello to the, like, worldwide zeitgeist around, the good mother. The archetype of the good mother is so pervasive that I can say I had never in my life heard somebody speak publicly about being estranged from their mother until I met you, Bethany. And that is, like you said, this is the first time something like this has ever happened. People gathering in a space together saying, we are all having this experience together. So there is a complete, like, even universal denial of our experience of having a mother who was less than good. Let's be generous. And so where do you start with that? Where do you even start to acknowledge that for yourself when there's nothing on the outside that acknowledges your experience?
Yes, it's such a form of deep bravery to get here. Some people say, I have so far to go. Like, this is going to take my whole life to heal. And I always say, you got here, like you made it. Like so many people don't even get here to this place where they realize they have work to do and healing to do. So, um, yeah, this is a time I think, in history where so much is coming out, and this is one of them. And I think it bodes so well for us as women, just collectively, what we're going to be able to transform for the future.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Let's see. I'm just going through the comments. Just a lot of people, affirming what we were saying. Um, that's where I'm stuck. Someone says, I cannot give up the dream.
Right.
Uh,
Of course.
yep, totally hear you.
Oh, I think this image of the good mother does a lot of people harm because even for ourselves, like let's say we are becoming mothers or, um, you know, even playing a nurturing role in our lives, when we have this image of the good mother pressuring down on us to be all capable, all compassionate, all sweet, all understanding, it's like it is so freaking stifling that all of the darker gradients of being human are excluded from your experience. And so if you get angry or you get impatient with your kids, or you lose your temper, or you fall apart in a blubbery mess, all of those things have shame attached to them because that is not what a mother does, right? So
Right.
this image of the good mother is like, it's terrible for everyone. I think what we really need to do is start to flesh out a new imaginary mother who is the whole spectrum of those things. And maybe, we could even say, and this is something that I've come to conclude in my own, well, conclude is a final word, but one of the things that has enlightened me around this work around the death mother archetype is that part of the reason why my mother was the way she was because of this good mother image, because there was no place for her to feel safe enough to ask for help or to do healing or have that reflected on the outside of how freaking hard it is to be a mom. And how as women, let's even take that broader piece around how as women we can't always be nice and pretty and acquiescent and understanding and compassionate and blah 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 blah. What about like angry? What about incisive? What about uh, an ocean of changing emotion.
Right.
So I think there's this archetype which is it needs to crumble, and something new needs to come into its place, which is inclusive of all of those darker, what I call the dark guests, who show up on our doorstep, and we really don't want them to hang out at our house, but there they are, and they're going to stay for as long as they like, and we're going to have to feed them and deal with them. So
Yeah.
I think it is worthy to reimagine what a mother can be, what a woman can be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a huge point because it's the source of so much of our pain. And when women ask me, how do I break that? I think it's really the work of us doing our own dismantling work, like we're doing here. Like, the more women that can embrace their own full spectrum humanity, you know, and do it even against the backdrop of a society that doesn't support it, like, and we support each other as women, that's how it changes. It changes by each of us, one at a time, slowly over time, in growing numbers, claiming our humanity and doing it without shame and without guilt, and just saying this is it. And support is such a big part of that, to be able to do that. And yeah, providing the space for us to be real. And that has to start with each of us. It really does. And I'm excited, so excited, Toko-pa, like about the woman of the future that we're crafting in ourselves right now. Like, I think she's being born inside of us. And
I love that.
yeah, we're pregnant collectively, with something. And um, so I think just even those micro moments that we say no, in our daily lives, that we say, I'm going to be my full self here. I'm going to do this, even though there's going to be backlash and someone's going to be upset. I'm going to do it anyway. Every time we claim a tiny millimeter of our humanity from these cultural bullshit roles and beliefs, we are birthing, this new collective woman. So thank you for naming that.
Yes. I love that. I love that image of us collectively birthing a new feminine. I absolutely believe that that is what is happening right now. And I think a lot of the stuff that we're dismantling is actually the patriarchy. Like this idea of who the feminine is and who the masculine is and what is inherent to our gender. A lot of it is just bullshit,
Yeah.
And it really needs to be revamped.
It totally does. It totally does. And yeah, we're doing it. We're revamping it step by step, And that's why I just want everybody who's listening right now to just, take a moment and appreciate yourself, like you're here, you're doing this work. This is brave. This is huge. This is deep stuff. It's long term. It's not easy, all of this stuff. And you are, one of the awakening cells of the new woman that's being born. And, feel your badassery, and really own that, with your boundaries, not just with your mother, but yeah, Toko-pa, were you going to say something?
Can I offer just some language to everyone?
Please. Yes.
Okay. If you feel like it, just close your eyes and just say this to yourself. I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
Mm. Can you say that again? Say it a little louder.
I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
Mm. That feels so good.
That happened to me spontaneously yesterday. I was just, some days it's a simple thing, but you did it all as best you could. And those words rose up spontaneously in me. I'm so proud of you. It was really, really nice. So I wanted to share it.
Oh, thank you for sharing. And we should tell each other that often. I mean, tell ourselves that often, to really, all it takes is a moment. And there's so many reasons to be proud of ourselves, that we often don't even recognize. But the more we recognize it, the more strong we're going to feel, and the more badass we're going to feel, and the more nourished, by our own selves we can show up, in those challenging moments as our badass self. So thank you so much for sharing that, Toko-pa. And I'm just looking at the time, and so it's time for us to conclude, but feel free, everyone who's listening, to keep, sharing on the feed. The feed's going to be there. I'm going to go over and, look at some of your comments that I'm sure I missed. And people are saying, thank you, Toko-pa. Yes. Thank you all for being here. And Toko-pa, this has been a true gift of your time and your energy and your presence. And I'm so grateful that we got to hang out with you here. And I'm so excited to gift your book. Everybody, I'm going to be picking randomly 3 of you who are on the feed tonight, and you're going to get Belonging in your mailbox. So I'll be contacting you, whoever we randomly pick, sometime tomorrow to get your book. And thank you for writing this book, Toko-pa. If you guys don't have it yet, you definitely want to get it. I'm going to share the link to Toko-pa's page where you can buy her book. My copy is completely underlined, and you see I have tags and everything. It's just one of these books. I know I'm gonna like. It's gonna be so loved up. It's gonna be all tattered before too long, but this book is amazing. So thank you so much, Toko-pa. Your wisdom and your energy is such a blessing.
Ah, it is such a pleasure to be with you and to be in this community. And I love collaborating with you. I think that is one of the amazing things that comes out of healing this room is the sense that we can enrich each other, you know, by collaborating and sharing. So thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your community. Thanks to everyone who showed up today. It just had a really gorgeous energy the whole time.
Yes, thank you, everybody, and for all of your comments and for all of your, questions and shares. And I just appreciate you all being here live and letting us know you're here. It's just so fun to feel that connection, that community connection. And Toko-pa, I love collaborating with you, and I look forward to the next time we do something fun together like this.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, have a wonderful night and a fun weekend. And I'll be talking to you soon in your inbox. I've got some more treats coming for you in the pop-up. Okay, bye.